Yeah, sorry, I was having issues with the recording. Yeah, I
My
can.
name is Nikita Daniels. I am with Keith Smith Construction. I am a licensed general contractor in the state of Florida. I guess the reason why I even registered for this Zoom meeting is that um, I saw that your firm received a very large contract with the City of Gainesville, and therefore I was intrigued to see if I could, our construction company could one day obtain a contract or a bid as large as you guys did. So I guess my question is, at the end of this, at the end of your research, will we as vendors be able, like a little closer to be able to achieve and obtain contracts such as Griffin did? Is that the purpose of it? Is that the purpose of the study? Or is your purpose primarily just to see why minority-owned businesses or why women-owned businesses aren't applying for contracts with the City of Gainesville?
Now, do you want me to jump in here for a
Sure.
second?
I saw you unmuted yourself, so I thought you wanted to respond. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I apologize. I'm battling a little laryngitis today. So the purposes of our study is to see if there have been inequities in the way that Gainesville has been contracting, and that it has resulted in that the way the policies, procedures, the way that primes have operated. So it's not just a study of the city's procurement directly, but also of subcontracting. So it's the behavior of primes as well. That's what we're studying to see if there are inequities. If there are, and if we find them, then we are creating a legal basis, if there are inequities based on race and gender, to create race and gender-based programs that will enable there to be a more equal playing field. At the end of the day, we cannot guarantee that anyone actually gets a contract. But what we want to be able to guarantee is that everybody has an equal opportunity to get a contract. And that where there are things that may be barriers, particularly to minority and women-owned firms, that we remove those barriers.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
Welcome.
Any other questions? I'm looking at the chat to see if there's anything else. So one question is, what do you need from us here if you're interviewing staff looking at policy? So that is what we talked about in the end. We really need community members to participate in the anecdotal collection, like interviews, focus groups, public hearings. So all of that kind of stuff, it's really important to have community input. Michelle, you're muted.
I also want to emphasize here, we do these studies all over the country. We're working on a couple of studies now where we put out the survey and we're getting very little participation. Please don't let that happen here in Gainesville. And I don't believe that because so many of you participated in this informational meeting. Like that survey, when it goes out, that survey, we take those numbers, compute them, and then determine those big issues, particularly try to measure those bigger issues that you all are having. So if you don't participate in that survey, we don't get the answers from the community through the survey that we need. Yes, we're doing other things. We're doing this meeting, we're doing interviews, we're doing focus groups and public hearings, but that quantitative, how many people said this, how many firms said that, if you don't participate, we don't get those numbers. So please, when you see that survey come into your email, please respond to it. It'll take you about 15 minutes to fill out.
Michelle, we have a question here. Does your study study examine how local government are using federal dollars, which have strict guidelines for minority businesses.
Yeah, so we do look at your DBE participation. We look at any DBE reports that have been submitted to the feds. We do look at all of that. But see, those programs are, in other words, you don't have any control over that. Those are goals set on Fed, anytime Fed dollars are used. So although we are reporting on that, there's no change we can make in that. So our changes are really focused on your own local spends. Yes, the emails will be coming direct. No, the emails will be coming directly from our dedicated email. So you might want to put that Gainesville, and I apologize, there's a typo in there, but it's GainesvilleStudy@gspclaw.com. You might want to put that in your browser to make sure it doesn't go into your spam. We'll also do a press release, so hopefully you all will know when it's coming. No, the study, somebody asked, is this strictly for minority women? Or is this study for all Gainesville women business owner? This study is all women and all minorities. So it's not just minority women, it's all women business owners.
Michelle, this is Sylvia. Good afternoon. Do you mind typing, or someone who's available to type the correct dedicated email chat? I was trying to remember what it was so that I could type it, but I didn't want to get it wrong.
Sorry, you're talking about the website?
The Gainesville Disparity Study, GPC, that email address that they'll be receiving their emails from that had the typo in it earlier.
Oh yeah, we put it a couple of times into the chat room, so it's in the chat room. It's GainesvilleStudy@gspclaw.com, and it is properly spelled in the chat room.
Got it. Okay, so there was just one of them misspelled. Okay, thank you, Michelle.
There also is a dedicated website, which is GainesvilleDisparityStudy.com. So there's an email and a dedicated website. The website will have all of the information there as well. So we will post. So if for some reason you don't see the study in your email, I mean the survey in your email, the survey will also be up on our dedicated website.
May I ask a quick question? The last question confused me a little bit because the way it's worded says, is it strictly for minority women? But the study is not for any particular group. The study is to find out where there may be inequities and disparities within the city. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding?
So our study does disaggregate. So when you see the statistical analysis, it will break it down by ethnicity and gender. So when we look at where the disparities are, we will be looking at individual ethnicity. So there'll be African American, Hispanic, Asian American, Native American, and then women, and then non-minorities will be in a separate category. So you'll see it broken down by that. And then also utilization will be broken down by years. So we do disaggregate our analysis.
Your information, right. But the goal of the study is to find out which groups are not having access or need greater access or need assistance to get greater access.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything us as vendors can do in order to help out before you guys start presenting the focus groups and the closed meetings? Is there anything that we can do, like prep work, so that we you guys have the best study that you could possibly have for the city of Gainesville.
I think in some ways, this meeting here, it's one of the reasons we hold the informational meeting. Yes, we hold it so we can tell you what's going on, but it also is our introduction really to your marketplace, where you begin to tell us maybe even some of your issues or some of your concerns. So in this forum, you're welcome to tell us if there are certain issues that you have or certain concerns and positive. By the way, we're looking for not just what your concerns are, but also positive experiences, things you want to make sure that we know the city is doing that's helpful to you.
Any other questions? I don't see any questions in the chat. Michelle and I have added the disparity email and the website for the study as well. Mr. Murray, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. I've got a question for you. In light of the way we shop and the way we do things today, we buy more stuff online than we ever do. Will your organization take a look at that as well? And because that has an impact on minority and small businesses as well. So I'm gonna, as a part of this, will you guys be able to look at that as well as a part of your disparity study? Because as more and more people are now buying stuff online, including cities, we buy stuff online as well. So we don't know. Only thing we know, if we buy from Amazon, they may be the most the best price for us, the best way to say that. And so that has an impact on whether we buy locally or not. So I'm asking whether or not you guys will take a look at that as well as a part of the disparity study. And then the second question I probably needs to part of this is, will you guys be looking at the ability for minority and women businesses to get financing? Because that's a big piece in getting bonding as a part of your disparity study as well.
So with regard to the first part, we're not specifically studying online shopping versus direct shopping, because what we're studying is who are you buying from, and we also look at where they're located. So yes, the impact of online shopping, when we look at the area, because we do look at where is the area, because part of our study, as Anna said, is looking at our relevant market. So our relevant market is, your relevant market is where are you spending at least 75% of your dollars? Where's the city spending those? So is that right there in firms in Gainesville, or does it go out? How far out does it go? And we look at that by each of the work categories. And one of the categories is goods. So you are likely, even before online shopping became a big thing, that your goods are going to generally be further out away from Gainesville than probably your goods, your services areas. So construction, professional services, construction related professional services and other services may very likely be much closer in. Goods will tend to be sometimes the whole United States. So we do look at geographically where you're purchasing from, but not the method.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, in that quick moment, I forgot your second question.
My second question had to do with bonding and financing,
Yes.
because that's a big issue, because many of the small businesses, and particularly minority and women-owned businesses, may not have the financial capabilities to get a letter of credit, those types of things, to bid on projects, or the ability to get bonding. so that they can bid on projects. And so I will ask as you do this to take a look at those areas as well.
Yeah, so part of when we do the private sector analysis, which is an analysis that looks outside of just the spend that Gainesville is doing, but we look at the whole marketplace to see if there are disparities. One of the focus of that scope of work is to look at credit market disparities. So what's going on with credit markets? Also in your survey, there's information. We do ask questions about insurance and bonding, what's your levels to find out what's going on with firms. And by the way, our survey goes to not just MWBE firms, but it also is going to non-minority firms. So we can do a comparison between, whether this is an issue for everybody or whether it's more of an issue for MWBEs. So we do look at that very closely in the private sector analysis.
We still have time for questions. I don't see any other questions in the chat. But if you would like to send your questions in the chat or just unmute yourself, feel free to ask any other questions. And just a reminder, if you do have more questions that you think about after, we can always email us and leave your comments again in our disparity email, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you might have through the email. One question, does this survey include veteran-owned small business, or is that a separate category?
Yeah, so this study is minority and women-owned firms. So with veterans and small businesses, you don't need a disparity study. One of the primary reasons for doing a disparity study is to see if there's a need for race or gender conscious programs, and that you have to have this factual predicate of a disparity study if you're going to have anything that's race or gender conscious. But veterans and small businesses are race and gender neutral. So the programs that you put in place for those just have to have a rational basis for being put in place. So you don't need the strict scrutiny that's required for race and gender conscious programs.
We have another question. What are the best ways to be competitive in bidding for local, state, and government contracts?
I'm sorry, say that question again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't think this applies so much for a presentation, but what are the best ways to be competitive in bidding for local, state, and government contracts?
Well, that's a big question. What's the best way to be competitive? So I think that's kind of outside the scope of this, but of course, the best way to be competitive is first of all to be ready, and then you want to make sure that you have an equal playing field, which is what, we want to make sure everyone has in every jurisdiction that we work in. So the biggest one is to be ready and to, know what it is that you're bidding on. I mean, there are we're trying to our job is to remove any barriers for you to be competitive. Somebody asked what guidelines are being used to measure participation level. So participation level is is availability that Anna talked about. She talked about utilization and availability. And the disparity is kind of the comparison of the two. But the level of participation that we're looking at would be the level of availability. So when we look in your marketplace, we see, and you use 15% or whatever it is. If we see that the level of participation of MWBEs is 20%, then if that's the level of availability, then that would be the target of what would be expected for the participation of dollars. So we compare the availability percentage to the percentage of dollars spent with these groups. And so that's where the disparity is. So for example, if you have 100 engineering firms in your marketplace, and again, determining what your marketplace is one of our analyses. But if you have 100 engineering firms there and 10 of them are African-American owned, then you have a 10% availability. But if then we look at the dollars spent and you've only spent 2% of your dollars with African-American owned engineering firms, then we have a 10% availability, 2% utilization. That's where the disparity is. But yes, availability is what we want to try and get the city to.
Michelle, this is kind of a question slash comment. I know that some people, I've had a lot of people who kind of get it confused when you talk about availability versus utilization. And they assume that you all are making your comparison to the demographics in the city. Can you, rather than the utilization of those types of business owners, can you explain to the audience? I know no one's asked it, but just why you don't use those demographics versus the availability of actual business in certain categories.
So the Croson case, which is the thing that the Supreme Court came out that we follow in order to do these studies, was very clear that you cannot set your levels of participation at population levels. That was one of the arguments in Croson. Well, the city of Richmond was 50-some% minority, particularly African-American. So why can't we have goals at that percentage? And the Supreme Court said, because that doesn't take into account the percentage of available firms in those demographics. So you have to compare the availability of firms and to say, these are the available firms who are ready, willing, and able. So who, if the city of Gainesville puts out a contract tomorrow, who are the firms who are ready, willing, and able to participate? Now, we know that what enters into who are the firms who are ready, willing, and able to participate, what enters into that is the issue of discrimination could have kept firms from existing. So part of our private sector analysis is the likelihood of self-employment. Like, what is it? Is there discrimination that has maybe entered the playing field so it has depressed availability? And so that's what we have to work on increasing, so that by the time you do the next study that you do, instead of there being a 20% availability of firms, maybe there'll be 30%. So part of the programmatic outcomes we want is to begin to increase the number of certified firms. So the firms that are out there that aren't currently certified, we want to get firms certified. We want to see more firms in your area come into being. So all of those are things that we want to work on. But availability itself, current availability, is based on ready, willing, and able firms currently in the marketplace. And that's what the Supreme Court says we have to look at.
Thank you so much.
John Dole said that while I don't fit your target demographic, I appreciate what your organization is studying. So It's interesting because although we're not studying specifically small businesses wind up being a beneficiary because sometimes we find, particularly through the surveys, which is why it's important for non-minority firms to participate in the survey, is that sometimes we see that the issue is not just an MWBE issue, but it is also an across the board issue, like let's say bonding, insurance, or size of contracts, or there are lots of things that could become issues that are based on maybe small businesses. And so we seek to remedy those because at the same time we're remedying that issue for MWBE firms, we're also remedying it across the board for all firms. So that's why it's really important that non-minority firms participate in that survey as well. And in the other areas like today and in the public hearings, and email us the comments about the experiences as well. Because if we don't see what the universe is, then we don't see what is particularly affecting MWBs that's different. So the geographic, Tony Best asked about the geography that we use to measure availability. So it goes to, we kind of borrow from antitrust law. And antitrust law is how do you determine your marketplace, and it's by where you're spending. So we look at where the city of Gainesville is already spending at least 75% of its dollars. And wherever that is in each of the 5 categories, that's the area that's we're studying. So it would be firms that are located in that area because that's the area where you're spending your dollars.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
I'm Pablo. I'm with JMI Staffing Solutions. I sent the question to Anna. I guess I share with everyone. It's whether the city would be able to help on matching companies that bid for certain projects that are not necessarily minority-owned business, but could benefit from using a minority-owned business. In some situations, you have a minority own business that is not capable of doing the 100% of whatever the contract is, but may be able to do 30 or 40 or 50%. And therefore the company that is not minority owned may be able to benefit from using a minority owned business.
So in some cases, that's where the subcontracting program comes in, as well as joint venturing and teaming. So joint venturing and teaming, those are also, that's a good comment for us that you think that might be beneficial. So yeah, we do look at JVs, we do look at teaming, and part of that is you having enough time to prepare and to do that. But subcontracting is a huge focus of this study.
Yeah, and to add, I mean, as it is now, we reach out to companies that we know are bidding for certain projects on different counties or cities, and we offer our services so they can at least, especially for set-aside contracts. But the question is, sometimes the city may get only, I guess, responses from companies that are not minority-owned. And the question will then be whether the city will say, okay, why don't you partner with this company and your chances of getting the contract may increase, or provide a list of the different minority-owned businesses to these other companies that are not minority-owned business, so they could reach out to us or create that connection.
Right. So again, that's I think you're talking about kind of a combination of subcontracting, which is putting goals on projects. And so it depends on the outcome of the study, whether that toolbox, that tool in the toolbox could be utilized, which is setting goals, MWB goals on projects where firms would be required to use a certain percentage of MWB firms on a project, or they would have to show good faith efforts that they tried to bring in minority and women-owned firms into that project. So those are things that we'll have to consider as we see the outcome of this study.
Great, thank you.
I don't see any other questions in the chat, Michelle. Any other questions or comments?
We're also open if you have a comment about any of your experiences doing business or attempting to do business with the City of Gainesville, or if you haven't done business with them, why not? We're also open to those comments. So you don't just have to ask questions today. You can also give us your commentary if you would like. Of course, that email address is there where you can email us if you have a story you want to tell us. You can send it to that email that we put in the chat room. You can attend a public hearing, which will be probably, like Anna said, probably in the early winter. You can send us back comments. There will be interviews, and our interviews are generally randomly selected. But if you specifically would like to be interviewed, we're happy to do that as well. We want your participation. Because, and one of the big reasons we really need your participation is because the statistics will tell us if there's a problem, but it doesn't tell us how to fix it. You know, and we have some expertise about what we think has worked elsewhere, but your place, Gainesville, is a unique place. So if you want us to apply unique remedies, if we see an issue, we need your participation to tell us what that is. Mr. Murray.
I'm raising an issue is because we're so close to Jacksonville. In some cases, we need specialized services. In some cases, the specialized services are not available in the general geographical area. The only place it's available, in some cases, is Duval County or Orange County or Pinellas or Hillsborough. I would ask that you take a look at that. It's particular because we own our own utility company. The fact that we own our own utility company, they use specialized equipment. We just need to take a look at that. And then the second thing, the city's put a lot of emphasis on taking a look at disadvantaged individuals, groups in that perspective, particularly one of those individuals who may have had run-ins in the law, but may own their own small business as well. So yeah, we need to take a look at that. And also I would ask you guys to take a look at, the city recently adopted and approved an apprenticeship ordinance, to take a look at that as well as a part of this disparity study as well.
We will do that. There's an apprenticeship ordinance. You went on?
Yes. Yeah, the city just recently adopted one several months ago. So I would tell you to take a look at that. But again, too, one of the things that you need to also look at is what's our geographical area? You know, that's the other side of that as well. When I say geographical area, what businesses are in that geographical area that could benefit from providing those services. And then the other one that I'm going to just ask, and I know you probably got it on your mind, how do we reach out to those small businesses that really don't participate in the process at all, particularly those businesses where we have an unhidden population of a strong Hispanic population in our community that don't utilize a lot of city services, but are there. But also there may be businesses that they are operating, and as well as we have a strong Filipino population in our community as well. So when you start taking a look at that, and they may not show, it may show in the new census data, I don't know, but those are some things. And the other, how do we communicate to those groups where English is not their primary language to participate in this process as well.
Those are really good points. Those are really good. Those are really helpful for us to be able to look at the apprenticeship. That'll be part of the policy review. We do ask the question about particular language services. And I'm sorry, I missed one of the points you made.
We have a strong, I call it populations here in our community that really don't utilize our services, but they may provide services to the community, and they only provide that service to their specific population. So we just need to take a look at that as a part of your study. That's all. And how do we reach out to that segment of the population? And we'll work with Sylvia in our office to see how we reach out to those individuals and get that information out as well.
One thing that would be helpful to us is if any of you are a part of organizations or no organizations, we also do organizational outreach. And one of the big reasons we do the organizational outreach is to reach those firms who may not be popping up on any one of our other lists. So, and then we ask them to distribute our information to their membership. And that could be any organization that you think would be helpful to us to reach out. So the chambers are good. If there is, I don't know if there's a Filipino or a Hispanic chamber or a Black chamber, but those are really good for helping us to contact get information. Sometimes we can do it through the city to firms who have recently gotten DBAs. Sometimes that's helpful to us, but we do want to be able to reach out to firms who are not going to show up on our radar otherwise. So our study doesn't go so far as being a needs assessment. However, it's kind of winds up, integrating a little bit of a needs assessment, because as you tell us your experiences, hopefully firms will say, this is what we need from the city in order to participate. So that's always helpful too.
Any other comments or questions that you have for us today?
See that Tony Best put in comment to Mr. Murray's statement, a challenge or barrier to entry is the many disparate systems used across the state and municipalities for solicitations and used to respond to bids. Okay, we'll take that as a comment as well. By the way, all of your comments, every single one of them is taken into account in this study. Some cases you'll see in the anecdotal section where we quote you. It won't have your name attached. We don't use names in the study itself, but you'll see where we say, in one of our meetings, so-and-so said, and we'll quote you. Or we'll aggregate your comments to say, we heard this over and over again, but every single one of your comments is taken into account.
All right, oh, I just got a comment. All right, so Brian Murphy would love to be put as part in the study. So great. So we will probably send you some emails and with the upcoming events. So we would love for you to participate on them. So if there's no other comments or questions, we can resume our Oh, go ahead.
So I want to, Sylvia, since you're on, do you want to make any closing remarks?
Sure. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Anna. I appreciate both for all the information that you shared with us. Very beneficial, and thank you to those that joined us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sylvia Warren. I'm the acting EO director for the Office of Equity and Inclusion. Let me put myself on camera. I'm in my car on my lunch break listening. So I did put a link in the chat for those of you who are interested in registering with the City of Gainesville as a small business owner. There's a link in the chat. I did hear some questions that were a little bit specific to the city and how we do business. If you have some direct questions about, like, for example, there was one that I heard earlier about, how we deal with primes and connecting them with subcontractors and things of that nature. If you want to ask some direct questions like that, please feel free to contact our office. Our number is 352-334-5051. Again, that's 352-334-5051. And Shakayla, if you don't mind putting that in the chat, I'd appreciate it. Elizabeth Michael, who is our new small business program coordinator, is also on the line, and she'll be more than happy to speak with you about doing business with the City of Gainesville, which includes, subcontractor opportunities and ways that we encourage you all to participate with the city. Again, that's 352-334-5051. Thank you again, Michelle and Anna. We appreciate you for such a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. And Shakayla added the information on the chat, so I'll leave you guys a minute to, copy that information if you need. And again, if you have any other questions, please reach out to us on our disparity study email, and we will respond to you as quick as we can. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. This was a really great turnout. And I hope you all have a great day. And this recording will be on the website, just as a reminder. Thank you so much. Have a great day.